Here are the tools that you're going to need to do the install. You can have a pair of channel locks, a 1/2-inch wrench, a 9/16 socket, a 1/2-inch socket, and a pair of snips. If you don't have a little ratchet driver, then a 9/16 wrench and a 1/2-inch wrench or a equivalent socket will do the job. We want to remove the factory discharge chute. This takes a 1/2-inch wrench. I found it easier to remove this end first with the spring. Set that up out of your way, then lift the flap, take this last bolt out, set the chute aside. Now we're going to install the no drill mount. Included should be the mount, 2 5/16 by 1 carriage bolts, 2 5/16 by 1 3/8 bolts, and the nuts to go with them. When you install this mount, these holes go to the top. Carriage bolt goes from the inside. There's 2 existing holes on the deck that you will put these into. We'll use a 1/2-inch wrench to tighten these up. With the no drill mount installed, the next thing we're going to do is install the hinge plate itself. I'm going to use our 3/8 carriage bolts for this. When you do this, make sure that you have the spring and the spring mount above this plate. This takes a 3/8 wrench. We run these down close, but don't tighten them up all the way until we get the flap positioned properly. With these bolts snugged up, then take your knee, press it against the hinge plate itself and hold it in tight against the face, and then tighten them up. Now we're going to go ahead and position the spring mount. So the first thing we have to do is remove this nut and bolt. We're just going to start this on loosely. And we will finish tightening this when we install the cable. Now we're ready to go ahead and connect the cable to the spring mount. First thing we're going to do is pull this rubber boot off. We're going to spin jam nut number 1 all the way off. Jam nut number 2 is going to go about halfway. Slip the wire into the slot and put the fitting in place. And then put jam nut number 1 back on. You can finger tighten this, will be fine. Now, we're going to go ahead and tighten up this bolt that positions our spring mount now that we've got our cable laying here in the direction we want it. We'll show you the cable routing. This is on a 52-inch ZK. So we've got the GrassFlap installed here. The cable routes up around this edge. Over to here, we've got it attached with a little magnet wire holder. I'll show you more about that in a minute. Then from there, we come up through here where you can see it. This drops down through. There's a little triangle-shaped piece. You can see where the cable runs through there. Then over here to the back side, another view of that, where you can see it. triangle shaped piece. There's the cable coming through it. There's my hand. Comes through there, comes up to the front, to the foot pan rather, to the back, and then up and attaches to the pedal here. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and install the pedal. So the pedal is going to use a couple of carriage bolts. That's when we're putting it on a ZK. So for the ZK, we get 2 carriage bolts, and there's a couple of options here. You can mount the pedal pointed this direction, depending on the size of the deck and the routing of the cable, or in some cases you can point it this way. It's going to depend on the cable routing and that. Most of the time, though, your best cable routing is going to be this direction, so we're going to go ahead and install it this way. We've got 2 bolts here. And when you install it, you want to set it over far enough that, so basically on the ZK, you'll have 4 open holes and 4 open holes here. So you put the pedal this direction, and then you can orient it a couple different spots here, depending on how much of a turn you want on, or how far over you want it pointed. We're going to go with it this direction here, though. Once you have the carriage bolts in place, we're going to go ahead and put our flange nuts on the bottom. We're going to tighten these up. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and connect our cable, and the cable is roughly laid in place where we want it to go. First thing we have to do is go ahead and remove jam nut number 1. So we're going to go ahead and spin that one off. And we also want to make sure that jam nut number 2 is mostly all the way back on the threaded fitting. Our spring is going to be disconnected, so we'll take that off. Now, so we're going to lift this pedal up out of our way, put the wire in first, and then I usually just get the fittings started in a little bit so I can still reach in here and get the nut started. So you're going to want to get the nut started and put it on maybe a 1/4 inch or so, not too far on, because the other thing that you have to do is you have to get this rubber boot and shove it back in place onto the end of the cable. So it takes a pretty good push there, but you can get it seated back on. Okay, now once that's done, then we'll go ahead and spin the nut in the rest of the way. I'm going to just snug it up for right now. We'll have to remember to come back and tighten that up with a 1/2 inch wrench in a moment. Okay, now, next thing we need to do is we need to take our clevis. We're going to slip our clevis onto the end of the wire. Once it's in place, then we're going to go ahead and put our 1/4 inch pin in on this end. And get that clevis in place. I'm going to go ahead and hook this spring to get it out of my way. It goes into this little catch right here. We're going to put our cotter pin in. Wrap the cotter pin all the way around. Now we want to go ahead and zip tie the cable in position. We're going to zip tie the cable into position here on the ZK 52-inch cable routes between these 2 holes and up around this edge here. We're going to go ahead and put the cover back in position. cover in place, this cable routes past the zip tie and up around this corner and up through the GrassFlap. Now we're going to go ahead and connect to the spring mount. So open loop goes to the top. It's going to connect here onto the spring bolt. She's using a small pair of channel locks or something similar. I'm going to go ahead and pull, hook this on. Spring should be all the way out to the end of this bolt. And then if you notice when you open and close, the spring does rub the head of this bolt, which is supposed to do that. And this allows the whole flap here to shift toward the back of the mower. We're ready then to install the cable itself to the mount. So we're going to take our remaining hardware. Should have left a little bronze bushing, a 3/16 pin and a cotter pin. So the 3/16 bushing slips into this hole. The clevis itself goes over that bushing. And then when you install this 3/16 pin, you want to make sure the head of the 3/16 pin is on the same side as the spring. So using your left hand, insert the pin in through the bronze bushing. Position your cotter pin. You want to go ahead and bend your cotter pin all the way over. Once you have the cable connected on the flap end, then you want to go ahead and snug the jam nuts on the cable fitting itself. You don't have to over tighten these, and go ahead and make sure that the rubber boot is back in place where it belongs. And then do the same procedure over on the pedal end. Snug the jam nuts and verify the boot is in place. Here we have a Wright Stander ZK 52-inch with a GrassFlap installed on it. Push and release to close it, push and release to open it, or I can close it and then feather it anywhere I want by holding my foot on the pedal. Great thing is you can control the lawnmower and drive while operating the GrassFlap.